This hour, a Malaysian Boeing 777 airliner is reported to have crashed in Ukraine's east, where the military is battling against local self-defense units. Now, apparently the aircraft was travelling from Amsterdam and disappeared from radars 60 kilometres away from the Russian border. According to the manifest, 280 passengers are on board and 15 crew members. And very sadly, we are getting information from Ukraine's security services. The presumption from them is that all of the people on board are dead. We have had eyewitness reports. Again, these are unconfirmed, but they do seem to corroborate the information we're getting from other sources. Eyewitness reports, unverified, saying that they have seen parts of the plane, wreckage on the ground, as well as bodies. And Malaysian Airlines, who originally claimed to have no information on any possible plane missing, they have since sent out an official tweet confirming they had indeed lost contact with one of their planes in that region of East Ukraine. Okay, I'm going to be speaking to one of our correspondents, Union O'Neill, in just a moment. But first of all, let's go back to Irina Galushka, because she's located by the Russia-Ukraine border and has been bringing us information from the ground as it's been coming through. Irina?
Yes, indeed. Of course, looking at this story, of course, as the pivotal point is that the plane has gone down, presumably, near the town of Shakhtorsk, which was the site of some of the most intense fighting between the anti-Kiev forces and the Ukrainian military. And now we are hearing that Ukrainian military forces are actually sending a special division to the Donetsk region, assumingly in connection with the incident. At the same time, President Poroshenko has already said that Ukrainian forces have nothing to do with this. Of course, the question remains, what exactly happened? Why did the plane go down? We know at this point that the representatives of the Donetsk People's Republic have said that they have nothing to do with this, that they simply do not have any weapons capable of shooting down a 777 traveling at a height of 10 kilometers in the air. Of course, we're looking at a Boeing 777 with almost 300 people, 295 on board.
Oh, we can speak.
Hello. I seem to be losing the connection with you.
No, we've still got you. We've still got you, Irina. Sorry, we've just lost you there for a moment.
I'm very sorry. The connection here has been catchy. Now, we're also hearing from eyewitnesses that they seem to be finding debris and body parts on the ground, but that of course cannot be confirmed at this point. So as we're talking about it, there's still not 100% chance that the plane has gone down. I can tell you that actually we were traveling not far from the border between Russia and Ukraine at the very time of the presumed plane crash, and I did see some black smoke in the very, very far distance, and that of course raised some questions, but I cannot, of course, confirm with any certainty that indeed it was the smoke from the plane crash. I just knew that it was there. So this is obviously a story that is starting to give a whole new international tragic tint to the events that are happening in the southeast of Ukraine. Obviously, an area already hit with much bloodshed in very recent weeks. Because of the confrontation that we've been seeing between the Ukrainian forces and the anti-Kiev forces on the ground.
Okay, Irina Galushka on the ground there for us there by the Russia-Ukraine border. Thanks so much for that update. Just to bring you that background information on, unfortunately, similar in some ways incident back in October of 2001. That was when a Siberia Airlines passenger jet exploded over the Black Sea. According to the aviation agency investigation on that occasion, it was downed by an accidental launch of a surface-to-air missile from Ukraine. That was confirmed by Russia, although Ukraine denied it was firing any rockets at the time. The plane was heading from Tel Aviv via Bulgaria to the Russian city of Novosibirsk. 78 people were on board that particular flight. Now, earlier this year, another Malaysian Airlines flight went missing after leaving Kuala Lumpur for Beijing. Now, you'll remember this, I'm sure. It lost contact with air traffic control on March the 8th. The company reported the aircraft missing. A massive worldwide search began for that jet, and as yet no trace has ever been found of it. The ongoing operation to locate that plane is currently centred hundreds of kilometres off the eastern coast of Australia. So potentially what we're looking at here is another tragedy for Malaysian Airlines, with a potentially large-scale loss of life. Let's bring you the latest now. It's a developing story, more information coming in every minute. Thanks for staying with us here on RT to get the latest. And it is that a Malaysia Airlines Boeing 777 has crashed in Ukraine's east. These are the reports that we're getting. That is a region where the military is battling against local self-defense units. The aircraft had been en route from Amsterdam. It disappeared from radar systems 60 kilometres from the Russia-Ukraine border. The manifest says that there were 280 passengers on board, in addition to 15 crew members. And very sadly, according to the information that we're getting from Ukraine's security services, unconfirmed, but this is the information we're getting, the presumption is at this point that all of those people on board are presumed to have died. We're not expecting at this stage, with the information we're getting, there to be any survivors. And just to recap the kind of timeline as this story broke, because at first we were getting reports from Russian and Ukrainian media sources that there'd been a plane had crashed in eastern Ukraine. At first, Malaysian Airlines had no information on this. That has since changed, because they have since given out an official tweet confirming that they have lost contact. Nothing beyond that, but they have lost contact with one of their planes, and it was indeed in this region of Ukraine. According to the information, indeed, we believe there were 200 people on board, passengers that is, in addition to 15 crew members. Now, self-defense forces in eastern Ukraine, it's obvious to people are going to join the dots here and assume that this is connected with the internal disputes in Ukraine. Self-defense forces, though, they have denied any involvement whatsoever in the crash. And I can also bring you the very latest information, and this is coming from Kiev, and it is that President Poroshenko has said that Ukraine forces were not involved in any possible crash of an airline there. We have, though, had information suggesting that Kiev does indeed have surface-to-air missile defence systems in this area. No connection with a possible crash, but President Poroshenko is saying that they were definitely not involved. There was no connection to their forces. Let's go back now to Irina Galushka, who's by the Ukraine-Russia border. Irina, what more can you tell us?
Indeed, well, it's a place that has seen some very intense fighting in recent days, and the news of this plane, of course, as tragic as they are, actually second in the span of about 12 hours concerning a plane that has gone down. In the first instance, we've heard accusations coming from Kiev, who were saying that Russia is responsible for shooting down their fighter jet, Su-25. And in fact, it was this type of jets, Su-25, that were indeed responsible for bombing the town of Shakhtarsk in the Donetsk region, which is the place near which the MH17 seems to have gone down. So this is something that we can, this is just one bit of the detail. Of course, Russia has already denied any allegations coming from Kiev. Russian officials have called those ridiculous, preposterous, and they have said that Ukrainian officials do have this propensity for blaming Russia for essentially everything that happens, everything bad that happens with or in Ukraine. However, in this instance, with Su-25, the pilot has ejected himself safely. When we're talking about MH17 Malaysian aircraft, unfortunately, we could be looking at almost 300 people who are dead. At this point, of course, they're presumed dead. There's no official confirmation whatsoever. In fact, Malaysian airline officials themselves have only recently said that they have lost connection. Up until a certain point, they were saying that they have no information on the crash or on any of their planes missing. Of course, now they have changed their tune. But we are hearing also, as we have said earlier, about we're hearing reports from eyewitnesses who are in the area. They seem to have found some debris, and some bodies even, presumably from the plane crash. Again, no independent confirmation on these reports whatsoever. Personally, I can tell you that I was traveling just near the Ukrainian-Russian border right about the time of the crash. I did see some remnants of the black smoke billowing in the far, far distance where Donetsk region is. But honestly, we have seen so much fighting in recent days here near the border, sometimes on the border, sometimes across the border, that really, every time you see billowing smoke, you cannot say with certainty what it is. It's kind of become something that people here are accustomed to, unfortunately. But again, we're looking at a conflict in Ukraine that is becoming more and more tragic, and now it has this international angle on it as well, of course, because we're talking about a passenger plane with 295 people, all of whom at this point are presumed dead, but that is the presumption made by the Ukrainian security services.
Okay, that's our correspondent Irina Galushka joining us with the latest from the Ukraine-Russia border. Now, I believe that we can speak to an aviation expert, Phil Baum. First of all, though, just to introduce my colleague Ewan O'Neill, who's come in. You were supposed to actually take over from me now, but of course, this is such a big story, and it's looking like a horrifically tragic story. I think we'll stay together on this one and just try and piece together exactly what's happening. But welcome to the studio.
Well, I tell you what, we should maybe just go to the background of what we know at the moment, just give an overview of what's occurring. We do know that the Boeing 777 was en route from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. That's fact as we know it. That's been confirmed by Malaysian Airlines as it stands. We're also giving details that we know that Petro Poroshenko, the Ukrainian president, has also confirmed, or he has said at the very least, that his forces had nothing to do with the crash. We cannot confirm, of course, at this stage, it's happened so soon, what occurred. We do know that 285 passengers and 15 crew members were on board the Boeing 777. It was a Malaysian Airlines plane. We know that it has gone down, it has crashed. We don't know how it crashed over East Ukraine, but it was flying over Ukrainian soil at that stage. So now I believe we can actually speak to Alexei Yarashevsky, who's been following the story as best he can as well. We're going to try and talk to him now. Now, Alexei, what do we know at this stage? Because it's happened so soon. We're trying to piece together the details of what occurred. An incredible amount of people on board if it was a disaster of that scale. What do we know?
Well, so far, lots of information coming in. Most of it is not really confirmed. We do know, and it is confirmed by the Malaysian Airlines, that they lost contact with the aircraft. It is lost somewhere around the territory of Ukraine. As you've mentioned, we've heard both from the self-defense groups operating in the east saying that they were not responsible for what seems to be potentially the plane being shot down. The same sentiment coming from Kiev, from the Ukrainian president, who said that the Ukrainian army had nothing to do with this plane going down, if it was presumably shot by a ground-to-air missile. But let's go back 13 years ago to 2001, when a Russian airplane from the Siberian Airways was flying above the territory of Ukraine, above the Black Sea, and it was shot down by a Ukrainian missile. This was confirmed by the investigators of the International Aviation Committee, the Russian experts and investigators. At the same time when that plane was hovering above the territory of Ukraine at the same height, presumably as this Malaysian jet, this time 11 kilometers. The Ukrainian armed forces were having a military drill in the Crimea. And what is very peculiar about that story, 78 people dead, 66 passengers and 12 crew members on that flight from Israel, from Tel Aviv to Siberia, to Novosibirsk. The Ukrainian authorities still refuse to take any responsibility for that. In fact, some 3 years ago, there was another court case. It was, in fact, a whole string of court cases in Ukraine, and another final court case ruled that the investigation of the International Aviation Committee was inconclusive, and it proves no guilt of the Ukrainian armed forces. Of course, the happenings of today and the happenings of 13 years ago have little in common. The times were, of course, different, but again, we have to remember that this is not the first time that a passenger jet with many people on board goes down above the territory of Ukraine.
Alexei Yarashevsky getting us up to date with background as well. Thank you for that.
OK, I think we can actually speak to another of our correspondents now, Peter Oliver. We're going to try and look at this situation from several different angles and get the information to add to that we've already accumulated. And indeed, there is Peter Oliver. Peter, what more can you tell us? We're kind of piecing the story together as we get it. What more can you add for us?
Well, the news is filtering out here across Europe of this flight, obviously originating from Amsterdam. We still don't know the makeup of the nationalities of those on board, although there have been some reports coming out that apparently there were no Russians on board the flight, but we still don't know exactly who was on that plane that has gone down over Ukraine. We have heard that the Ukrainian authorities say they're going to launch a commission to investigate exactly how this happened, how this tragedy came about. But yes, what we do know is what we've been telling you, that this Boeing 777 with 295 people on board has gone down over eastern Ukraine, near to the city of Shakhtarsk, and everybody on board has been killed. We've heard from the opposition forces that have been fighting in that area. They say they're not involved in this, and the Ukrainian government in Kiev have also denied any involvement. But the fact that this plane was flying so high, and since it's flying at 10 kilometers of altitude, and that it seems, well, it's been claimed that it's been hit by a missile that would have to have come from an advanced anti-aircraft system in order for that to have taken place. But yes, as the news comes out here in Europe, we're starting to see real messages of shock and dismay, people trying to find out who was on that flight from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur, and trying to establish just what went on and how this tragedy took place.
OK, Peter Oliver reporting for us there. Thank you. Just to bring you a reminder now, the very latest on our breaking story, which is that a Malaysia Airlines Boeing 777 is reported to have crashed in Ukraine's east. This is where the military was battling against local self-defence units. The aircraft had been, as we just heard, en route from Amsterdam when it disappeared from radar systems 60 kilometres from the Russian border. The number of passengers is believed to be 280, in addition to 15 crew members. And they, according to Ukraine's security services, are presumed to be dead. There have been eyewitness reports which haven't yet been verified, which would add to the, unfortunately, the sound suspicion that could in fact be the case. Now, Malaysian Airlines have confirmed in a tweet a short time ago that they lost contact with flight MH17. That's all the information we've had from them, but they've confirmed that they lost contact with their plane in that region. Now, I mentioned earlier, obviously this is a conflict area, battles taking place between the Kiev forces and the self-defence forces in the region. Now, we know the self-defence forces, they have denied any involvement in this incident. We've also heard from President Petro Poroshenko, he's denied any official Ukrainian involvement. What there has also been, though, is reports coming through. Now, they are coming from the Donetsk region, which is the area we're talking about, and the reports are that yesterday surface-to-air missile defence systems were moved into this area. This is yet to be confirmed by the authorities in Kiev. No official confirmation as yet, but those are reports that are coming through. But as it stands, both sides are denying any involvement at all in the grounding of this Boeing 777, which, as time passes, is looking increasingly likely that this was a large-scale tragedy. let's just remind you of an incident that took place back in October 2001, some similarities there. This was a Siberia Airlines passenger jet that exploded above the Black Sea. According to the aviation agency investigation on that occasion, that plane was downed by an accidental launch of a surface-to-air missile from Ukraine. That was confirmed by Russia, although Ukraine denied that it was firing any rockets at the time. The plane was heading from Tel Aviv via Bulgaria en route to the Russian city of Novosibirsk, and on that occasion 78 people were on board. Also, earlier this year, I'm sure you'll remember this, another Malaysian Airlines flight that went missing after leaving Kuala Lumpur for Beijing, and it lost contact with air traffic control on March the 8th. Now, the company reported the aircraft missing. A massive worldwide search then began for that jet, and as of yet, no trace of it has been found. The ongoing operation to locate the aircraft is currently centred hundreds of kilometres off the eastern coast of Australia. And just to welcome Union O'Neill to the studio. Union, in very unfortunate circumstances, but you're getting information, as indeed I am, and we're pooling together our correspondents on the ground just to try and get more information from each side of this developing story.
And the thing is as well that we're getting information that is showing disparages as well, because we can't say for certain how many people have died for certain, or even at not how many people were on board. We've got some information from Interfax Ukraine who say that all 295 people on board have been killed, and they are quoting a Ukrainian Interior Ministry official saying that. But we're also hearing that there was 290 people on board. So we're just waiting to confirm any details when we get it. We're going to try and, I think, and move to Peter Oliver, who has been keeping an eye on things as well. Information coming from all different types of sources. Peter, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi.
Peter, what's happening? As far as we know, we're getting drips and drabs of information coming in. We can't confirm anything at the moment. We're getting different quotes. What do you know where you are?
Well, what I'm looking at right now is a statement that's just been released by the Malaysian Prime Minister, saying that he's shocked by the reports that are starting to come out. We've been seeing some what appear to be the first pictures from on the ground where this plane has gone down. Some of those are horrifically graphic. They're appearing on social media sites and online news organisations. We certainly wouldn't be able to broadcast any of those on RT, on television. It would be, they're really quite graphic images that we're seeing. But yes, as the information's coming through here in Europe, we're hearing of people being distraught in Amsterdam, where the plane originated from. Here in Germany, around on the streets in Berlin, people in cafes are getting the information from cell phones, and there's some very shocked reactions here that I saw while I was making my way to the studio here. But yes, what we do know is for a fact that this Boeing 777 has gone down in the east of Ukraine with 295 people on board. Some of the reports we are hearing is that they are saying that all of those people have tragically died in this horrible situation. The plane was en route to Kuala Lumpur, the Malaysian Airlines plane. That's why we've heard from the Malaysian Prime Minister expressing his shock. From the Kiev government side, President Poroshenko has said that his side had nothing to do with this. We've also heard similar denials from self-defense force leaders in the east of the country. This has been the scene of some really bitter and horrific fighting of late. And both sides have denied that. In fact, one of the leaders from one of the self-defense organizations has given a statement to the Reuters news agency, pointing the finger, just in the last few moments, pointing the finger directly at Kiev for this involvement. We did hear rumours that heavy anti-aircraft installations had been moved into this particular area. As I say, it is an area that has seen quite fierce fighting, but at the moment we really can only tell you what one side is saying, what other sources are saying. This is really something that is developing quickly. It is, of course, a huge tragedy. As it seems, it turns out that all 295 on board that flight have died, have been killed in this incident. The Kiev government has said that they're going to launch an investigation. That's going to be underway very shortly into trying to work out exactly what went on. But for now, we're hearing just a multitude of reports coming out constantly. About what's gone on one way or the other with regards to this incident with the plane crashing in the east of Ukraine.
OK, that was Peter Oliver giving us the update there. One thing to note as well, as I keep saying, we're getting information coming in from different sources. We're hearing from Interfax Russia that separatist rebels in East Ukraine deny any involvement. That is what we're hearing at the moment. While we try and verify that and get more information, we're going to try and talk to Alexei Yaroshevsky, who can give more background, indeed, on what we're seeing, what we're hearing. Alexei, we've got no concrete information. What can you tell us?
Well, as has been mentioned already by Peter and you, there's no concrete information. We're only getting conflicting reports, statements from both sides of this ongoing fighting in the east of Ukraine. But there's one absolutely concrete thing, and it happened 13 years ago, suggesting that it's not the first time that a passenger jet with many people on board crashes in the territory of Ukraine. In 2011, in October, a Russian Siberia airline jet, now known as S7 Airlines, was flying from Tel Aviv to Siberia, and it was accidentally, as it's been claimed by the Ukrainian authorities, hit by a missile, ground-to-air missile, because at that time the Ukrainian army was conducting a drill in the Crimea, and they claim that this rocket accidentally hit the plane with a jet at the same altitude, at the same height at which the Malaysian jet, which now fell in east of Ukraine, was reportedly flying at around 11 kilometers above sea level, and the Russian jet fell into the ocean. 78 people on board were killed. Only 14 bodies were recovered. But one particular thing about that incident is that for a very long time, for more than a decade, Ukraine has been reluctant to admit it is at fault. It was at fault. I do remember a court in 2011 in Kiev which ruled that the investigation by the International Aviation Committee, by the Russian investigators and international investigators, was inconclusive. It's only a bit later that the Kiev authorities actually admitted that the Ukrainian army was to blame for that incident, but still ruled it as an accidental blast of a ground-to-air rocket. Of course, the times were different back then. It's a different situation right now in Ukraine itself, in the world. But still, we have to remind that this is not the first time again that a passenger jet crashed in the territory of Ukraine, leading to mass casualties. Of course, we have to wait for more details whether this plane was actually shot down and whether some of these sides of this conflict were involved in shooting down that passenger jet.
It's true, we simply can't verify that at the moment. Alexei Yaroshevsky with information on background to this, what could be a horrific incident. Thank you very much.
OK, let's just bring you a reminder of the details as we've gathered them so far on this hour's breaking news story. A Malaysia Airlines Boeing 777 has crashed in Ukraine's east, where the military is battling against local self-defence units. The aircraft had been en route from Amsterdam and disappeared from radar systems 60 kilometres from the Russia-Ukraine border. All 280 passengers, in addition to the 15 crew members at this point, I must stress, this is still to be verified, they are presumed to be dead. That is according to the information we're getting from Ukraine's security service, in addition to unverified eyewitness reports on the ground. Malaysian Airlines, at first they had no information on this, but they have since, in the last half hour, confirmed in a tweet that they have indeed lost contact with flight MH17, that it was indeed in that region. And that is the information as we have it. Now, I think that we can hear from an aviation expert. This might be via a translation. I believe we have a Russian aviation expert on hand who's been able to give his take on this incident. Let's take a listen. Okay, I think we're just trying to get that sorted for you. Right, we've lost that, I'm afraid, but we'll try and get you that expert online to talk about it a little bit more. The key point, I think, Union, at this point is, first of all, as we said, a lot of unconfirmed information, but people at home will be listening to this and they'll be making their own conclusions. First of all, when you're getting information from so many different sources, your instinct is it's going to be hard for this to turn out to be completely untrue when you've got people on the ground, when you've got media sources, when you've got the airline themselves saying they've lost an airline. It's looking bad, isn't it?
That's the issue, that Malaysia Airlines themselves have said they've lost contact over East Ukraine with this passenger jet, 295 people on board. You know, at the moment it's looking like a real disaster, but we have to just say we simply can't say whether we know or certain what is occurring.
Yeah, absolutely. We're still trying to verify the facts. Let's try and hear now from Russian aviation expert to get his professional perspective on the details that we've had so far.
I can say that Boeing 777 is a very reliable plane. About 10 years ago, a Ukrainian missile hit a Russian passenger plane. So I cannot rule out the possibility that this Boeing was shot down with a Ukrainian SAM again. I cannot be 100% sure, but it is very probable that this was the Ukrainian military, their air defense forces. Based on what we know about the professional training of the Ukrainian army in general, we know it to be very, very poor. Instead of using career officers, they just use conscripts operating their equipment.
And the opinion there of aviation expert, I think that was Yuri Kalash that we were hearing from. And just to recap, he basically was saying that this is a reliable plane. So, in his professional opinion, it's going to have taken an external factor here, something untowards, to have brought that to the ground in his experience. And
as well as that, you know, the people are going to be drawing parallels with what happened on the 8th of March as well. Incredibly so, a Malaysian Airlines plane went missing. This is a Malaysian Airlines plane as well. There's going to be all types of information coming out. I tell you what, let's go to Irina Galushka, who, as I keep saying, has been following this story. We're getting information, she's getting information. Irina, can you get us up to date on what's coming in? Because even at this stage, the death toll, if it is at all a death toll, we simply don't know that. What do we know?
Well, we do know that was an MH17 flight operated by Boeing, operated by Malaysian Airlines, Boeing 777, one of the largest one of the most popular air carriers out there. Was carrying 295 people on board, going from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. Obviously, when we're talking about this sort of flights, we're talking about a very international number of people on board. So, of course, at this point, we cannot confirm exactly nationals of which countries possibly could have perished in this crash. I have to tell you one thing, though. However, I looked at some of the pictures that are floating out there on the internet, and it's possibly one of the worst things that I have ever seen in my life, and I'm not of the weaker kind at this point. Sorry for that personal interjection. I just thought it was something that we really do need to get across to our viewers. Now, of course, we're talking about an area which has been basically the scene of some of the most intense fighting between the self-defense forces and the Ukrainian military forces in recent days. In fact, just 2 days ago, the village of Snezhne, where the tail of an entire piece of fuselage of the plane has fallen. Just 2 days ago, it was heavily bombarded by Ukrainian forces. We're also talking about an area where where the bombing was being carried out by Su-25 Ukrainian fighter jets. And of course, Ukrainian officials just on Thursday morning have said that Russia is responsible for shooting down the Su-25 fighter jet just a couple of days ago. The allegations which Russia vehemently denied, calling them preposterous. Of course, this is just yet another addition to the already very tragic events that we have been seeing on the ground there, with the intense fighting with Ukrainian military stepping up its efforts against the anti-Kiev forces. Another interesting information, however, what we have to keep in mind is the fact that on June 8th, Ukrainian Aviation Agency has closed down the area above the Donetsk and Lugansk regions for any passenger planes flying over the height of 7,900 meters. They said that was for purposes of security, and then they said that they will not reopen it for airlines until the situation in the area stabilizes. It obviously has been getting worse with every passing day. So exactly why, if there is indeed still that regulation from the Ukrainian Aviation Authority in place, why was a plane traveling over that area and at the height of 10,000 kilometers, which is a great height, obviously, is one of the many questions that needs to be answered. Of course, President Poroshenko has denied that the Ukrainian forces have any involvement in it whatsoever. And then, of course, there's also the representatives of the Donetsk People's Republic who are saying that they obviously also have nothing to do with it as well, because they simply do not have the weaponry, the ammunition to shoot down a passenger jet flying that high up in the air. Again, I repeat, 10,000 kilometers, 10,000 meters in the air. So we're talking about a lot of questions, a lot of issues, but it's obviously a very great tragedy in an area which has already seen enough bloodshed in recent months.
Glushka from the Russia-Ukraine border, keeping us up to date with what's occurring. We're going to be coming back to you as well. Just some breaking news coming in as well. We're hearing that President Putin and President Obama have discussed the issue in East Ukraine, and they've called for an immediate ceasefire. That's the latest news we're having on that. We are hearing that they have discussed the issue. They're calling for an immediate ceasefire so that this tragedy can be dealt with, and that's what the story is at the moment.
It does look like, I mean, we keep saying we are qualifying because nobody wants to flag up something that turns out to not be real, but I mean, everything now is coming together, isn't it? Especially when you've got Irina Galushka saying that the footage is coming through. She's seen pictures by her account which are horrific of what has actually taken place there. We're now getting official confirmation from world leaders. Clearly, they believe that this has taken place. So whilst we don't have the official confirmation, in all intents and purposes, it looks like we're looking like a grand-scale tragedy. And every other piece of information that we're getting in seems to fit the picture. In addition to what we heard from those officials, from a Russian aviation source, this came via the Reuters news agency, their aviation source says that this particular flight was expected to enter Russian airspace at 5:20 p.m. Moscow time, and it simply did not arrive. So everything that we're getting now is painting a picture of a large-scale tragedy now, very sadly.
Some other information just coming in. The Malaysian Defence Ministry has just said that they have no concrete evidence at all of the plane being shot down. So that's something else. That's some more information coming in. We are getting more and more information coming in. We're just going to try and evaluate the sources, etc. And let me just tell you about another situation, because in October 2001, a Siberia Airlines passenger jet exploded over the Black Sea. Now, according to the Aviation Agency investigation, it was down by an accidental launch of a surface-to-air missile from Ukraine. Now, it was confirmed by Russia, though Ukraine denied it was firing any rockets at the time. The plane was heading from Tel Aviv via Bulgaria to the Russian city of Novosibirsk. There were 78 people on board. Now, earlier this year, another Malaysian Airlines flight went missing after leaving Kuala Lumpur for Beijing. It lost contact with air traffic control on the 8th of March. Now, the company reported the aircraft missing in a massive worldwide search that I'm sure you saw at the time, and indeed now began for the jet, but no trace has ever been found. The ongoing operation to locate the aircraft, as I say, is currently centred hundreds of kilometres off the eastern coast of Australia, and that's what we were saying a little bit earlier. Just the parallels they're incredible. 2 Malaysian airlines in the space of less than 6 months could have disasters like this, and let's just verify that we do not know as yet what occurred, but Neil, as you said, we are hearing from different world leaders, from the Malaysian Defence Ministry, from aviation experts. It does seem like a major tragedy occurred.
Okay, and I believe that what we're seeing now are latest pictures. So this is the first time we're seeing these for ourselves. These are pictures that we are getting from the scene of the reported crash in eastern Ukraine. You can quite clearly see it there. Large plume of smoke coming up from what appears to be a lowly populated area, fairly rural. Let's just recap a few of the facts that we've managed to bring together so far. It's our breaking news story this hour. It's a Malaysia Airlines Boeing 777. These are the pictures that we're getting now on this reported crash in the east of Ukraine. It is, of course, a region where the military there is battling against local self-defense units. Now, the aircraft was en route from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. It disappeared from Ukrainian radar 60 kilometers away from the Ukraine-Russia border. We believe that there were 280 passengers and 15 crew members on board. They are presumed, from the sources that we're getting, including Ukraine security services, they are presumed to have all perished in this crash. Malaysian Airlines, they confirmed in an official tweet just a short time ago that it had indeed lost contact with flight MH17. Let's cross live now to our correspondent Irina Galushka, who is located on the ground by the Russia-Ukraine border. Back to you, Irina. This is really escalating now. What more can you tell us?
Well, indeed, we do. We do know that the plane has had 295 people on board. Now, of course, the questions are starting to rise. There's a lot of them that need to be answered. For example, exactly what was the cause of the crash? When we talk about the territory where the plane has gone down, it has seen some of the most intense fighting in recent days between the anti-Kiev forces and the Ukrainian military. And in fact, a piece of fuselage, the tail of the plane, has fallen in the village of Snezhne, and that is the area that has seen some really heavy bombardment literally just days ago, and on Tuesday, as a matter of fact. And also there has been involvement of the Ukrainian jet fighters Su-25 also bombing the area. And in fact, speaking of planes, Ukrainian officials have accused Russia of bringing down their Su-25 fighter jet on just within the last couple of days. They have said that Russia is responsible for it. Those allegations have been dismissed by Russia as preposterous. And of course, the representatives from the Donetsk People's Republic are also saying that they have nothing to do with bringing down the plane. They're saying they simply do not have any weapons that are capable of bringing down an air jet traveling at such a height. Now, to remind you also is that on June 8th, the Ukrainian Air Traffic Authority has shut down the airspace over Donetsk and Lugansk area, citing it as not safe enough for passenger planes, and it has closed it down for passenger planes traveling at the height of above of more than 7,900 meters. So technically, this plane wasn't even supposed to be there. Also, there is some information coming from some of the observers who are looking at the place where, looking on the map where the plane has lost connection with air traffic controllers, and they're saying that their area actually doesn't have any anti-Kiev forces operating in the area at the moment. So a lot of questions to be answered. However, we are looking at this great tragedy that nobody at this point knows the cause of, and nobody is willing to take any responsibility for as well. And of course, it's developing as we speak.
That's Irina Galushka, our correspondent by the Russia-Ukraine border. Thank you for the latest. Okay, Union, I believe that we can get a little bit more expert analysis on
Yeah,
this.
let's try that. We can. We're trying to get in touch with aviation expert Keith Volzinger, who may be coming to us by Skype. Are you there, Keith? Can you hear us?
Yes, I hear you.
Keith, just give us your thoughts on it. Do you believe in this instance that the plane was actually shot down?
Well, that's hard to determine this early on. Certainly, something catastrophic happened to the aircraft. I did see some video a short while ago of some black smoke in the field near a village, but I haven't seen any photos or video of aircraft wreckage as of yet, but I've seen that there are reports of it. So it's fair to assume that something certainly catastrophic happened to the airplane.
Keith Volksinger with his thoughts on what occurred. Keith, if you're still there, such an incident with Malaysian Airlines, it is quite incredible that it could occur. So many people on board, because a Boeing 777, it's a very large plane, isn't it?
Yes, it certainly is. A commercial airliner, and it certainly would be difficult to mistake it for a military aircraft, in my estimation.
Okay. Keith Volksinger, thank you very much for your thoughts on that. Okay, we're going to get a reminder just of our breaking news now. A Malaysia Airlines Boeing 777 has crashed in Ukraine's east, where the military is battling local self-defense units. The aircraft had been en route from Amsterdam and disappeared from radar 60 kilometers from the Russian border. We believe all 280 passengers and 15 crew, making 295 people, are presumed to be dead. That is according to Ukraine's security services. Malaysian Airlines also confirmed in a tweet a short time ago that it had lost contact with flight MH17. More details will follow. Of course, we'll be bringing you more on this developing story from a whole host of correspondents, including, I believe now, Irina Galushka, who's been coming into us every 10 or 15 minutes or so, trying to update us with what occurred. Irina, any new information?
Well, at this point, we can tell you that the Ukrainian officials are denying any involvement in the incident. They were, of course, the ones who said that the plane went down. They were the ones who were also saying that there were no survivors. If you have seen the pictures, well, it's clear that, unfortunately, that probably is true. However, Ukrainian President Poroshenko has said that Ukrainian military forces have nothing to do with this. Also, there was information coming from the representatives of the Donetsk People's Republic who are saying that they simply do not have any capabilities weapons-wise in order to shoot down a Boeing 777 traveling at that particular height. Now, there are several. It doesn't seem that any of the rescue crews have actually entered the region as of yet, but that region is actually the scene of some very intense fighting in recent days, especially the village of Snezhne, where an entire piece of fuselage has fallen on the ground, where the tail has landed, was the site of very extreme bombing by Ukrainian military just 2 days ago. That entire area has actually seen some incredibly intense fighting, including bombs that are being including operations by the Su-25 Ukrainian fighter jets. Now, also we have to keep in mind that the area above Lugansk and Donetsk region were closed to passenger planes traveling at the height of above 7,900 meters by the Ukrainian Air Authority, and it still hasn't been opened technically, so the plane actually wasn't supposed to be in the area by any standards, and exactly why it was there is not yet clear. Of course, this information keeps changing every passing day, every passing moment. I apologize for that. And of course, we keep getting more and more of it. And of course, as we get it, we'll bring it to you.
We're just looking at the pictures now. They are horrific. Irina Galushka, thank you for that. Some more breaking news as well coming from the Malaysia Defence Minister. He has said we cannot say for certain whether the plane was shot down or fell out of the sky at its own accord. In other words, it was an accident. We simply don't know. He said that it cannot be confirmed that it was shot down by missiles or that it crashed of its own accord. Neil.
Yeah, well, I mean, what does appear to be certain now at this point, when you've got everybody on an official source talking about this as if it's a fait accompli, it has happened. It appears we have a devastating accident that has taken place. You can see the latest pictures there, the plumes of smoke. And what we're seeing here are photographs of what we believe to be parts of the wreckage that have landed in certain parts of what is clearly a rural area. And everything that we're getting so far is adding up, very unfortunately, to the worst possible scenario, which is the presumption that all 295 people on board this flight have perished in the process. And let's hear now from a Russian aviation expert, Yuri Karash, who's given us his thoughts on the information that we have so far.
Просто так современные самолеты не падают. Давайте вспомним, сколько там лет 10 тому назад украинской ракетой был сбит российский самолет Ту-154. Я не могу исключить на 100% вероятность.
I wouldn't rule out the possibility that the 777 Boeing was also shot down by a missile. I don't know by whom, but I would imagine those were the Ukrainian military, simply because the Ukrainian military, particularly their air defenses, have a very little skill. They're very inept, and the general situation in the Ukrainian military suggests that they've been given very little attention. And it was just conscripts manning those missiles rather than officers with good background and training. So this suggests that it's possible that this Boeing could have been shot down by a Ukrainian missile.
Okay, so there we have the expert opinion from one Russian aviation expert. I mean, everything points now, we have a tragedy on our hands. The problem now is it's almost offering up more questions than answers, because we have the crash, we're getting pictures, what we strongly believe to be debris, no yet sightings confirmed of casualties, but one can only expect at that point that's going to continue. But you have also both sides in the conflict in the region denying any involvement. So when you've got the experts saying this is a reliable plane, they couldn't foresee circumstances in which it would have been some kind of failure. That's pointing to the conflict below, but of course everybody's denying involvement, which is probably what you would expect at this point.
Well, that's it. You know, we're hearing from such people as the Malaysian Defence Minister, who's giving his thoughts on it. It is incredibly difficult to give you know, an opinion on something like this, because we are, as I say, getting dribs and drabs. And I think we've got another expert standing by to speak to. It's Keith Volzinger, aviation expert. Keith, thanks so much again for coming back to us. You know, it is very difficult, as I was saying, for you to actually speak in this situation, but what can you offer your thoughts on this situation that looks now to have occurred and killed 295 people?
Well, it certainly is another tragedy for Malaysia Airlines and for the aviation community as a whole, and we certainly are thinking about all those on board. At this point, as you've said, no one has taken responsibility, so it's not certain what action has caused this, whether something happened on board, whether it's some form of external force that was acting on the airplane. It's, you know, remains to be seen, and I'm sure once the wreckage is located and sorted through, they'll find out something about what could have possibly happened. And I'm sure they'll, first thing, once they find the wreckage, they'll be going for the voice and data recorders.
Keith, I just wanted to ask you, in your expert opinion, I mean, everybody knows about the hostilities that are taking place on the ground, and I presumed that there wasn't even air traffic going over this region, but clearly on this occasion there was. Does that surprise you?
Well, I'm not familiar with the air routes over that region, but if the aircraft was not on the cleared routing, then there could be an issue to be looked at with that.
And do you know much about this particular airline, Malaysia Airlines? Unfortunately, members of the public are all too familiar with it because of what presumed is a tragedy, the missing airline from earlier in the year. And now another incident. People are going to start asking questions about this particular airline, maybe unfairly, maybe not. You know, what's your experience of the airline?
Well, my experience with the airline is that it's fine. They've had a good record. In a circumstance such as this, it seems that it's unfortunate that it happened to Malaysia, but whether they were singled out or anything happened on board or the airplane was misrouted. It's
at present,
really not
my brother is there.
And I'm also curious just to find out, when you're talking about an airplane of this size, and as I understand, the altitude is like 10 to 11 kilometers up in the air. At the moment, people are guessing, speculating the possibility that it was shot down. Just how difficult would that be to do? How substantial of an explosion would it require to bring down an airliner of that size?
Well, I'm not an expert on military ground-to-air or air-to-air defenses, but I'm certain that there are systems out there that are designed to take out aircraft of any size.
Mm-hmm. Okay, really interesting to get the thoughts of you. Keith Walding in there, thanks so much. Possibly we'll speak to you again a little later in the programme. Ewan?
Yeah, we're also getting more information from people who actually saw the crash. There's eyewitnesses in the area. We were looking at pictures of the plumes of smoke, etc. Now I believe we can hear from some people who saw what occurred.
Fell down into the field. My brother is right there at the moment, and he says there are a lot of people. There's a lot of debris, and there are plane tickets Amsterdam to Malaysia that could be found. There's lots of food scattered around, and there are so many dead bodies lying around that they are impossible to count. My brother says there are lots of people there.
Okay, that was somebody who saw what occurred. I believe we've got somebody else as well who witnessed what now looks like a tragedy of 295 people killed.
I am right now right next to the village of Grabovo, and this scenery is shocking. I see smoking dead bodies, all mutilated. It is not that difficult to tell that this was a civilian aircraft. You can see passports of Malaysian and also Dutch nationals scattered around. The plane broke up in lots of pieces, which fell down within a perimeter of some 500 meters to a kilometer. According to preliminary information from militia, the aircraft was shot down by a missile which came from the positions of the Ukrainian military. This information will be verified. It is possible that the airplane was shot down by Ukrainian air defenses. I personally saw Malaysian passports scattered around the site of the crash. So far the area has not been sealed off. Firemen have just arrived, and so far the debris is still smoking. The preliminary version says it could be the Ukrainian air defenses that shot down this plane, because the armaments that the militias have in southeastern Ukraine is not enough to shoot down a plane from 10,000 meters above ground.
So eyewitness reports for you there of what is an unfolding tragedy. It seems like there's very little doubt about that now, with all the information we're getting from different sources. It is that an airline travelling, Malaysian airline, Boeing 777 flight that was travelling from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. It is reported to have crashed in eastern Ukraine. And the belief at this point is that all 295 people on board, 280 people, 15 crew, have perished in that flight. And these are the latest pictures that we have for you from the ground of the smoke coming from the site of the crash. We've had eyewitness reports of bodies on the ground. No reports as yet of any survivors. We've had aviation experts saying that this was indeed a reliable plane, the Boeing 777. It's unlikely to have suffered any mechanical failure given its successful track record. And that's leading everybody to speculate now about the possibility that this flight was indeed shot down because it was, of course, flying over the conflict zone in eastern Ukraine, where you've got the Kiev authorities fighting against self-defense forces. But, of course, Union, Both sides, as you would probably expect, are denying any involvement in this.
Yeah, and we should also maybe point out as well that both the Kremlin and the White House have now confirmed that President Obama and President Putin have spoken on the phone, both about this and about the violence in East Ukraine. They've called for an immediate ceasefire. That's also information that we are hearing. Russia's envoy to the UN, Vitaly Churkin, has said we didn't do it. That was in response to a question by a reporter at UN headquarters in New York. So, yeah, Neil, we're getting information left, right and centre here coming in. The Malaysian Airlines press themselves have said that we lost contact of the plane. 295 people were on board, now presumed dead. But we are simply waiting confirmation as to what occurred. We're seeing pictures of plumes of smoke. We're seeing the actual wreckage. We believe that this is what it is of this Boeing 777 Malaysian Airlines.
And as we said, eyewitness reports of bodies on the ground. It's getting hard now.